My cousins were celebrating their millions at my grandfather's funeral. I was standing there in a thrift store coat holding a wrinkled envelope no one cared to look at. A plane ticket. Preston laughed, waving it like a joke, while the rest of them clinked their champagne glasses. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just tucked the envelope back into my pocket and walked out of that country club with every eye on my back. 48 hours later, I was on a flight to Rome, and what they thought was pity turned out to be power. Before I tell you how it happened, tap like and drop a comment. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? I grew up believing my family name meant something. The Whitmores were supposed to be legacy-class old money with impeccable manners and even colder hearts. But for me, it mostly meant learning how to disappear quietly while everyone else fought for the spotlight. My father Richard was the kind of man who carried the world without complaint until it killed him. He worked himself to death cleaning up his brother Vernon's financial messes, signing papers he should never have signed, trusting people who only saw him as a safety net. When the heart attack hit, he was alone at his desk at midnight. I was 15. After the funeral, my mother Grace went back to 12-hour nursing shifts, her eyes hollow but steady. She never talked badly about them, the uncles and cousins who drained us dry, but I saw the way her hands trembled whenever the Whitmore name came up on TV. "Promise me," she'd say while making coffee before dawn, "you won't let them turn you into one of them." And I promised. I became a history teacher instead of a business executive, the disappointment of the family group chat. Every Thanksgiving, I'd sit at the kids' table while my cousins bragged about corporate titles and luxury cars. Preston the golden boy loved to remind me how noble it was that I'd chosen a humble life. Mallory filmed the dinner for her followers, editing me out completely before posting Whitmore family traditions. I pretended it didn't sting. I had my small apartment, my students, my quiet weekends grading papers and watching rain hit the same water stain on my ceiling. I thought peace was enough. Then, Grandfather Roland died. The man who built Whitmore Shipping from one fishing boat to an empire, who taught me chess on Sunday afternoons and never once told me I wasn't enough. He was the only person in that family who saw me as more than a mistake. When the funeral invitation arrived, I knew I had to go, even if I had to drive 3 hours in my rusty Honda Civic with the heater half broken. The Rochester Country Club was drowning in black suits and fake tears. My Aunt Beatrice complained about the rain ruining her shoes. Preston practiced his CEO smile in the mirror. The air smelled like perfume and greed. I stood near the back watching the casket lower, whispering a quiet thank you that no one heard. I thought the hardest part of the day was saying goodbye. I didn't realize the real performance hadn't even started yet. The will was read 2 hours after the burial inside a wood-paneled room that smelled like cigars and old victories. The family gathered around a long mahogany table that gleamed like it had been polished just for their reflections. Preston sat at the head, already acting like he owned it. "Grandfather always said legacy should stay in capable hands," he announced, straightening his cufflinks. Mallory adjusted her sunglasses even though we were indoors. My Aunt Beatrice leaned toward her husband and whispered, "This should be quick." Mr. Harwick, the family lawyer, cleared his throat. Roland Whitmore reviewed this will 1 week before his passing. Every decision was deliberate. That was when the whispering stopped. You could feel the greed in the air pulsing like static. "To my eldest son, Vernon, and his wife Beatrice, I leave the Hampton estate and the investment portfolio ending in account 471. Beatrice gasped softly. Vernon grinned, pretending to look humble. "To my grandson, Preston Whitmore, I leave Whitmore Shipping Industries and all operational assets on the condition he maintains current employment levels for at least 1 year. Preston pushed back his chair so hard it screeched. "I knew it," he said. Grandfather trusted me. He was already reaching for his phone, probably drafting his new CEO post. "To my granddaughter Mallory Whitmore, I leave the penthouse on Central Park West and the yacht Serenity currently moored in Newport." Mallory squealed like a child on Christmas morning. The penthouse. "Oh my God, this is insane." And then the room went quiet. Harwick's eyes found mine. There was pity there and something else, hesitation. "To my granddaughter Claire Whitmore," he said softly, "I leave this." He pulled out a small white envelope, creased unsealed, my name written in shaky handwriting. The silence was so sharp it almost whistled. Preston laughed first. "You're kidding." "That's it." An envelope. I reached out and took it, my fingers steady even though my pulse was racing. Inside was a single plane ticket. Rome. One way. Departure 48 hours. Mallory laughed so hard her sunglasses slipped down her nose. "A vacation? That's adorable." Maybe he wanted her to find herself. Beatrice added voice dripping with sugar. Vernon folded his hands. Well, Roland always said she wasn't cut out for business. At least he gave her something nice. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the ticket. There was something off about it, too specific, too intentional. "Is that everything?" my mother asked quietly from the corner. "Yes," Harwick replied, "except for a personal letter to be opened upon her arrival in Rome." The laughter came again, louder this time. Preston leaned back, smug. "Guess you got your big adventure, Claire. Enjoy economy class." I slid the ticket back into the envelope and stood. "Don't worry, Preston," I said. "I intend to." Their laughter followed me out the door, but it didn't sting this time. It sounded like the kind of noise people make right before the ground gives way beneath them. That night, I placed the envelope on my kitchen table like it was evidence from another life. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, reflecting off the thin white paper. One way to Rome. October 15th, 3:00 p.m. My entire family had walked away with millions, and I had this. I could still hear their laughter, see Preston's smirk frozen in my mind like a photograph. Every logical part of me said to toss the ticket, go back to grading essays, and forget the humiliation. But my grandfather never did anything by accident. I stared at his handwriting, slanted, precise. There was a faint number penciled into the corner, 1947. The year he was 22. The year he'd left the Navy to start Whitmore Shipping. That detail snapped something awake in me. I opened my father's old leather journal, the one I kept beside my bed. Inside were business notes, sketches, half-written letters. On the last page, he'd scribbled, "Don't let them turn you into one of them." It wasn't advice, it was a warning. By midnight, I had made my decision. I wasn't flying to Rome for a vacation. I was going to finish whatever game my grandfather started. At sunrise, I called my mother. "You're really going?" she asked. No disbelief, just quiet acceptance. "I think he's testing me," I said. "Your father once told me Roland had 2 lives," she whispered. Maybe this is about the one he never spoke of. That stayed with me all morning as I walked through Lincoln High's halls to meet the principal. 3 personal days, she repeated. "You've never taken one in 6 years." "I know, but I need to." She studied me for a moment, then sighed. "You look like someone who just got dared by the universe." By noon, I'd arranged lesson plans, packed my suitcase, and booked an Uber I couldn't afford. The driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, noticed the ticket when I climbed in. "Rome," he said. "Nice escape." "Something like that," I replied. At the airport, I sat by the gate and ran my fingers over the envelope again. There was a weight in it that had nothing to do with paper. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small or forgotten. I felt chosen. When the boarding call came, I took a deep breath, tucked my father's journal into my bag, and stepped forward. I didn't know what I was walking into, only that it was mine. The arrivals hall at Fiumicino was a storm of rolling suitcases and overlapping languages, the kind of chaos that makes you feel like a single pebble in a river. I was moving with the current when I saw my name neatly printed on a placard, Claire Whitmore. The man holding it wore a black suit that had seen careful tailoring and a face that knew secrets. He lifted the sign an inch when our eyes met the way you might raise a curtain. "Ms. Whitmore." "I am Lorenzo," he said. "Your grandfather asked me to meet you." Heat bloomed under my coat. "He asked you?" When months ago he said gently, taking my bag before I could refuse. "Please, we have a drive." The car was a quiet black Mercedes that smelled faintly of leather and pine. Rome receded in blurs, ochre walls, laundry lines, scooters slipping like fish between lanes. We climbed into the Sabine Hills switchbacks carving the air. Olive trees lined the slopes like old men in gray coats. Every turn felt like a page turning. "I didn't know he had a place here," I said after a while, the window cool against my temple. Lorenzo glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "He called it the part that breathes," he said. "He came 1 week every September, alone." The road narrowed and then became a lane flanked by cypress trees, tall and exact as chess pieces. An iron gate opened without a sound. Beyond it, a honey-colored villa with green shutters and a wide stone stair. I felt something inside me settle like a piece finally finding its square. The door opened before we reached it. An elderly woman stepped into the light. She wore a simple black dress and a strand of pearls, and the angle of her chin was familiar in a way that hurt. Her eyes were the color of rain clouds before a storm. "Claire," she said in careful English. "Come." I knew before Lorenzo whispered Sophia that she wasn't a housekeeper. Her hands took mine with a certainty that erased the miles between us. "Your American grandmother, Carol," she passed. "I am your other grandmother," she said. "I have waited a long time to meet the one who plays like Roland." The floor moved under me. I nodded because speaking felt impossible. She led me through rooms that did not brag pale walls, terracotta floors, a long farm table scarred by years of meals. Family photographs covered one wall Roland young and laughing in a white shirt, Sophia in a cotton dress, a boy with Roland's eyes. The photographs had the gravity of proof. 1947. Sophia said, tapping a wedding picture, "We married after the war. He stayed to help rebuild. He left when Korea called him back. He meant to return sooner." I could taste the iron of truth on my tongue. He kept 2 lives. She didn't flare or flinch. He kept 2 truths, and he paid for it every day. We reached a room that smelled faintly of earth and oak. It wasn't a study or a parlor. It was a cellar without the chill a place built for listening. On a wooden table sat a laptop old enough to be stubborn and new enough to be personal. Lorenzo set my bag down. Sophia gestured to the chair. "Your grandfather left you a message," she said. "He asked us to play it when you arrived." My hands trembled only once when I clicked. Then the screen filled with him, older, thinner, the sharpness of his features finally at rest. He looked into the camera like he was looking at a chessboard and seeing 3 moves ahead. "If you're watching this, Claire, it means you took the flight," he said. "Good girl." My breath left. I pressed my palm to the table to steady it. "I gave your cousins what they always chased, rooms full of mirrors," he continued. "The company in Detroit is bleeding. They'll find the holes soon enough. The penthouse has 3 liens. The yacht is leased. The Hamptons estate half smoke, half loan." He smiled without humor. "I gave them appearance because appearance is all they asked me for." He leaned closer, then softening. "You never asked for anything. You came on Sundays to play and to listen. You left me with peace I didn't deserve. So I'm giving you the part of this family that's real. The vineyard produces 2 million bottles a year. The land is paid for. The workers are family. Your grandmother Sophia is the bravest person I ever knew. Your Uncle Augusto, her son, runs the day-to-day better than I ever did." He paused, and I heard the tiniest catch in his breath. "It's all yours, Claire. Not to sell, to keep, to grow. Consider it a trust I place in your hands because you are the only one who understands the weight of quiet choices." He sat back, the edge of a smile returning. "When Preston calls, and he will be kinder than he deserves. That will be the win they don't understand. Checkmate is not slamming the king. It's making the other player see the end and accept it." The screen went black. Somewhere upstairs, a clock struck the hour. I exhaled a sound that wasn't a sob and wasn't a laugh and felt like unlocking. Sophia poured 2 fingers of deep red wine into small glasses and pressed one into my palm. "Heredità," she said. "Inheritance." It tasted like summer caught in stone. It tasted like someone telling you you're not invisible. "Why me?" I asked, finally risking the question that had hummed under my ribs since the country club. Sophia's eyes softened. "Because you love things that do not glitter," she said. "Because he knew you would not trade the root for the flower." Augusto arrived by dusk, big-shouldered and quiet, with hands the color of soil. He hugged me with the care of a person who has carried heavy things for a long time. He led me through the vines while the light thinned, told me about trellising and harvests, about weather that lied and weather that told the truth. When he spoke about my grandfather, he used the present tense by accident and then did not correct himself. That more than anything made me believe this was not a fairy tale invented for my benefit. I stayed 3 weeks. I woke at 5 and learned by following. I carried crates and stained my hands. At night, I sat with Sophia and looked at photographs until the faces in them became names that became stories that became people. My body remembered being a child at a chessboard patient, exact taking time. On the 23rd night, I was back in Detroit, lying on my couch with a stack of essays on Reconstruction and a glass of Heredita, breathing on the coffee table. My phone lit up with Preston's name. Midnight. The kind of hour people use when they're out of polite words. I let it ring long enough for my pulse to even out, then answered. Claire. His voice was stripped of swagger. We need to talk. I said nothing. The accountants. It's bad, he said. Paper rustled on his end, the sound of a man drowning with documents that wouldn't float. There's debt I can't unwind. Vendors threatening to sue. The bank. He stopped. The penthouse I asked. Gone, he said, a whisper of a word. The yacht leased. Returned. The estate. A silence that tasted like ashes. Not ours, he said. Not really. I let the quiet hold. It wasn't cruelty. It was space for him to hear himself. You knew, he said, finally awe-wrapping the syllables. When you walked out with that ticket, I suspected, I said. Grandfather never did sentiment. He blew out a breath that sounded like surrender. He left you something, didn't he? He left me something real. Then the word broke in his mouth. Help me. I'll do anything. I pictured his cufflinks shining at the head of the table. The laughter, the clink of crystal. I tasted the wine again and felt the steadiness it gave me. There's a role, I said. U.S. distribution for Heredita. Salary. No ownership. You report to Augusto. You don't put the family name on any of it. He didn't pretend to be insulted. Yes, he said. I'll take it. 2 conditions I added. You apologize to my mother. You stop filming people's humiliation. His breath caught. Okay. And Preston, I said. You do the work. If you run, it won't chase you. It will just be there waiting when you get tired. He laughed once, a clean, unguarded sound I had never heard from him. You sound like him, he said. Sometimes I hear him, I admitted. In the quiet. After we hung up, I stared at the ceiling water stain, the Texas-shaped cloud that had watched me through years of smallness. It didn't look like Texas anymore. It looked like a continent without borders. Mallory was harder. She waited 2 weeks and then sent a long message that said nothing and everything, how she hadn't understood how she had wanted to be seen so badly that she turned herself into a brand. When we met at a coffee shop near campus, she kept her sunglasses on until she cried, which happened faster than either of us expected. I don't do crying, she said, swiping at her face and missing. It messes up my contour. Try telling the truth instead, I said. There's a job in Rome. Digital, but you'll spend real hours in the vineyard. You'll learn what it takes to make something slow. Her laugh was shaky. You mean I have to earn a story before I can post it? Exactly. She nodded, then surprised me by squeezing my hand. I used to cut you out of videos because you made the frame lean, she said. You didn't play along? I was playing a different game, I said. Vernon and Beatrice didn't call. They switched apartments like snakes shedding skin, traded a chandelier for a ceiling fan. Word traveled back through cousins and lawyers. Vernon found bookkeeping at a firm that paid on Fridays and never asked about Hampton's summers. Beatrice learned how to fold sweaters at Nordstrom and smile at strangers without calculating what their last names could buy. I didn't chase them with mercy. Mercy isn't mercy if you advertise it. When spring edged toward summer, I flew back to Italy. The heat rolled off the stones in generous waves. The vines were reaching tender green on old wood. Augusto took me into the cellar and showed me the barrels like a father introducing his children. Do you want to see where he watched his videos, he asked. I already did, I said, and we both understood what I meant. We played chess at the long farm table that night. The board was a simple wooden one, the pieces slightly uneven the way hand-carved things refuse to be perfect. I opened with a move he would recognize. Halfway through, I sacrificed my queen. The gasp came out of Augusto without permission. He taught you that he said. He taught me to see beyond what hurts, I said. We ended with me pushing a pawn to the 8th rank, the smallest piece growing into something it hadn't been allowed to be. I didn't say the metaphor out loud. I didn't need to. Later, standing on the terrace with a glass that caught the last light, I called my mother. The signal wavered, then settled. "Are you happy?" she asked, skipping hello, "because we didn't need it." "I'm steady," I said. "And I brought you something." I told her about a little house on a California hill with a studio facing the ocean, a place for her to paint without a clock nagging in the corner. She didn't cry either. "We come from a line that saves tears for the exact right hour. Your father would say you made a clean move," she said. I turned the bottle in my hands. The label read Heredità 2024, and in my grandfather's handwriting. For Claire, who trusted without knowing why. I set it on the shelf above the stove next to the salt and the olive oil where useful things live. The next morning, I walked the vineyard while the air still held night. My shoes darkened with dew. Workers waved, and I waved back with the ease of someone who finally belongs to the thing she's touching. When the sun cracked over the ridge, the vines glowed the quiet gold that only comes when no one is trying to make it happen. People will tell you revenge is a scream. They will teach you to throw the glass, flip the table, tear the dress. My grandfather taught me something else entirely. Revenge can be a harvest. It can be a salary with no title. It can be a seat at a table where the person who laughed at you now asks, "What do you need me to do today?" And you answer. Start with the heavy crates. On the flight home, a baby cried 3 rows ahead and a college kid snored against the window and the coffee tasted like burnt courage. I opened my lesson plan for next week. Reconstruction underlined a line about rebuilding not being the same as returning. I wrote in the margin for my students, but also for me. You don't go back to who you were. You step forward into who you were supposed to be, and sometimes the board was never where you thought. I closed my eyes and saw the country club, the laughter, the envelope. I saw the villa, the screen, the man who made a life that wouldn't fit into one country. I heard his voice again, the soft command at the end of his message. Be kinder than they were. That will be the win. I can't pretend the sound of their laughter doesn't still live somewhere in me. It does. But it lives next to the clink of simple glasses at a long table, the sound of vines moving when the wind decides to change sides. It lives next to a word I never let myself believe I'd own mine. 6 months after that funeral, the Whitmore name no longer echoed in marble halls or glossy magazine spreads. It lived quietly on a bottle on a hillside in the dirt under my fingernails. Preston managed the U.S. branch of Heredità Wines, now clocking in at 7 a.m., rolling up his sleeves, earning his paycheck one shipment at a time. Mallory ran digital campaigns from Rome, sunburned and unfiltered for once in her life. And Vernon, I heard he balanced spreadsheets in a small office in New Jersey, his signature no longer worth more than a day's labor. Mom moved into the little coastal house I'd bought her, the one with the blue shutters and the smell of salt in the air. She painted every morning, sometimes sending me photos of her latest canvas vines, sunlight a chessboard. You made peace out of noise, she said once. I told her I just learned to play a longer game. As for me, I split my time between teaching and the vineyard. Summers in Italy, winters in Detroit. My students think it's glamorous. I tell them it's just balanced. On the shelf above my stove sits that final bottle, Heredità 2024. I haven't opened it. I think it's meant to stay sealed proof that some endings don't need a toast. Grandfather was right. Power isn't what you hold. It's what you're willing to let go of. Sometimes I still think about that day at the country club, the laughter, the sting, the silence that followed me to the door. They thought I'd been handed nothing. But that envelope was everything truth legacy, and the reminder that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means waiting for the right moment to move. If you've ever been underestimated, remember people can laugh at your beginning and still applaud your ending, because one small choice can rewrite the whole game. If this story hit home, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit subscribe, there's more to come.